Well, something good must have happened this week because the truck is not in our shop. Regardless, we have some incredible progress on some 3D printed parts that are going to make your LS swap or Holley swap in your OBS that much easier. So we're really excited to show you guys that. And if you couldn't guess, it looks like we get this thing kicking in this episode. So stay tuned and see what's coming up. One thing to take care of real quick on the inner fender here, I want to mount our ignition here with the MSD box and the ignition coil and reuse these 4 mounting holes. So I have to drill them out a little bit and put some threaded inserts in there just so we can make that plate bolt up super easy. And just like that, we whipped up a quick 3D print of this plate, so before we get it made by Send Cut Send, we can make sure everything fits the way we want it to. So let's see how this thing looks on the truck. Cool. We could have the MSD right on here. It looks pretty good. Let's get it on the truck. Not too bad for a V1 prototype. And now we got the prototype installed, and I think it came out pretty good. Everything bolted up pretty perfectly, and I honestly have nothing to change. I just got to get the appropriate fasteners and wait for it to show up from Send Cut Send, which we also have a 15% off link, so hit our link down in the description and save yourself a little bit of money. And to continue things with the ignition, I went ahead and depinned the connector that this kit came with. And everything in this box was originally in this Molex plug, but I took it out because we don't need any of it, at least I think. So this should be the harness we need to get it running and happy with the Terminator X. And now I have the harness plugged into the MSD box and the coil. We just gotta do the orange and black to the coil to match that. Red's the power, white to the Terminator X over here, and a couple of grounds. So let's make this look a little less messy. Now we got the wiring pretty much wrapped up. We wound up putting a weather pack connector on the white wire that goes to the Terminator X so that can be separated. I'm gonna have the accessory wire running inside the car so it could go with all the other switched power accessories. The ground is gonna run to the cylinder head over here. The main power needs to get extended, and it's going to grab the battery terminal on the bottom under here. And then lastly, there was an additional ground that's optional, and I opted to just put it right here since it's right there and easy to get to. Now I'm going to loom all this up, but I just wanted to show you guys before I hide it all in wire loom and make it look tucked in pretty. I bet you didn't expect to see this part in its final form for this video. Send Cut Send was super quick with it and made us this part that we were able to get in the same video. So let's see how that one installs. Let's go over the new part real quick. I'm sure you can notice a couple of other differences right off the bat from the PLA printed part. One of them being all of the threaded portions are already done and all the mounting holes are countersunk. This is just going to make a much nicer install altogether and make it really easy and serviceable. On top of this, I also 3D printed some nylon spacers so we could get the proper depth for all this stuff. And here are the spacers printed in carbon fiber nylon. Came out pretty nice, pretty quick, easy part. And I got an assortment of fasteners from McMaster just so we could get everything exactly how we want it. So let's throw it together now. Honestly, one of my favorite things about getting parts from Send Cut Send is their PEM hardware. You got these threaded inserts that get pressed into the metal instead of tapping into aluminum, which we all know is pretty fragile. You can now have a nice steel insert for all of your parts to just thread right into. It makes it a super easy installation. I use these things all the time. This looks a hell of a lot better, and it's just gonna last a lot longer than a 3D printed part in an engine bay for an application like this. I would have loved to get it powder coated, but in this case, I just didn't have the time to do it, but that is a service that Send Cut Send offers, so you could just have a completed, ready-to-go part right out of the box from them, and it's incredible. I definitely want to do it in the future, but I'll probably just have someone local do that for me. But for now, I think this is pretty awesome. And here we have the first prototype. I didn't even pull it off the bed yet. But for something I whipped up at midnight or 1 a.m., not too bad for a first attempt. But I guess the real tell will be, does it fit? Now the moment of truth. Damn. That ain't too shabby. And of course we gotta test it in the truck. But if you ask me, that's pretty dang perfect with a ton of extra space for activities. So at this stage of the build, we have a lot more wiring going through the firewall that wasn't there before. We of course still have the factory wiring, which we cut the bulkhead out to make some more space, but we also have all the Holley harnesses that still need to go through there since we're mounting the ECU in the glove box. So this is just the ideal location to have that all plumbed. So to make it a little bit easier, we actually 3D scanned the original bulkhead and developed this product for us, but also for you guys. We're going to show you the configuration we're going with on this specific build, but we're also going to come up with a couple just typical options, and if you don't see what you want, you could always contact us and we're happy to make a custom part for you as well. So it's pretty straightforward. You're using the 2 factory mounting locations. Then you're going to have your position of wires that can just bolt onto this thing with threaded inserts, so it makes it for a super quick and easy installation. And we're also retaining the factory gasket. So just trying to make it that nice OEM plus that we all love. So let's see how it installs on the truck. Here's one that kept things interesting. We wanted to keep a oil switch with the factory plug so that could plug into the original harness and retain the oil safety feature with the fuel pump, so if there's no oil pressure, it'll kill power to the fuel pump. We just think that's a nice feature to keep. It keeps your car safe, engine safe, everyone's happy. Then we got a low dollar motorsports oil pressure sensor that's going to go to the Holley, and we found it was easiest just to keep those in the back of the engine because there's the most room on this truck, so we got one of these T adapters to have both sensors going into the same port. Now, from all our research, it told us it was 1/8 inch NPT, and it wound up being 1/4 inch NPT. So we had to get another adapter. So we're gonna adapt our adapter to adapt to the 2 sensors, and hopefully it works. There was one thing I jumped the gun on reassembly a little bit, and that is regarding this green fuel pump wire for the Terminator X. So we need the factory ECU and that to communicate. So we're going to cut this green and white wire on the ECU, which goes to the fuel pump relay, just so the 2 of them can communicate in harmony, all nice. And now we got the fuel pump wired in nicely, just spliced in there, and covered everything in some adhesive shrink wrap. Now we got to button this thing back up. Well, I'm sure you could guess, since we're going Terminator X Max on the truck, we're going digital dash as well. I think it'd be kind of blasphemous since that's like our entire product line. So I wanted to show you what it takes to pull one of these dashes apart and how easy it's to throw a 12.3 Pro dash in this truck. So just to jump into it, you gotta bring the column down, bring the gear shifter down, and then it just kind of pops out. And really the hardest part with all this is a couple of tabs and making sure you get all the electrical connectors off without breaking anything. There's the headlight switch here, which is easy to pop if you just get a screwdriver on the clip. And then these ones in the middle can be a little tricky sometimes. So let's see what that's gonna take. The top is the rear wiper switch, which you just take a screwdriver and push that guy in, pops right out. We added an aftermarket fog light switch, so that one came out pretty easy. And then this one you just push down and pull, I believe. There it is. You just gotta push down on this tab. Comes right out. Dash should just come out. Just gotta be gentle with it. There you go. And the gauge cluster comes out pretty easy. There's just 4 7mm fasteners. Pop those out. And this thing will be out in no time. And there's the last one. And this cluster should just pop right out. Just like that. And you can see here the circuit board is on the back of the dash, and it plugs in just by going on this right here. And there's going to be a little bit of wiring that needs to go on here because we need to grab a couple of these wires for various inputs into the Holley dash itself. So we're going to have to figure that as we go on as well. Let's see if this just pops out. There you go. Just those 2 little clips. They don't give you a whole lot of wire to play with, but we'll have to make do. Alright, so we stepped out of the truck for a second just so we could de-pin the Holley J2A connector. And that's because we have this little diagram where Spencer put together what pin on the Holley connector should get which wire off of the factory harness. So we're just going through and figuring out where the high beams go, turn signals, ABS light, airbag light, brake light, just all the dumb stuff that your gauge cluster should have. And we're trying to integrate that back into the Holley Pro Dash so we could have all those lights and sensors that we want. So just a quick little tip, just because it could get confusing with the rat's nets of wiring you're always dealing with in these trucks, is I just took our label maker and put high beams IP5 so I know it was referencing this wire that we just cut, just because there's a couple other greens and I don't want to get confused if we do anything wrong. So I feel like this is a foolproof way of just making sure we keep everything straight and we can make sure we can trace our mistakes back if any happen, but I'm pretty confident we're doing it right. Up next, we're gonna have to strip the wire a little bit, extend it for the Holley, and then we'll show you how we do all that to get it into that Holley connector properly. Well, you can learn from us, and one whoopsie that we made is I didn't know that the Holley couldn't take 16 gauge wire into this connector. So instead of stripping it and trying to figure out what combination of shrink wrap won't work, we figured out that the factory wires actually have the same connector and a similar gauge wire, so it'll just pop right in like it should, and that'll be much better than just trying to make the wrong thing work. So make sure you take that note from us. The wires actually came out of the VCM on the plug side here, so if you saw in earlier videos, we took a ton out of this thing when we stripped it down to bare bones. So we had a plethora of wire that just was left over, and we had our pickings of color to get from that. So I just tried to match it as close to the factory wire in there, and we'll make it work with the Holley now. So to mitigate any other issues, I went ahead and labeled all these new wires as well. And before we install them, let's just give them all a little strip real quick. So we got number 5 is in, and we go to 3. IP3 goes to 32. Got that fully seated. Then IP32, pin 24. Good. Pin 27 goes to 19. 16 goes to 21, and P1. P1 is dark brown. That goes into 30. 34, 33, 32, 31, 30. Let's let you guys see this one a little better. You just want to make sure it fully seats. You see that connector pop through, just like that. Tan and white, it's 28. That goes to 22. 22 is right here. Let's make that clear. I think that's it. So just make sure everything's nice and seated. Check up top. Everything looks pretty good. Just grab you a little screwdriver again. Now it's locked in place. And I think that's everything. Maybe we just jam that down there or something, I don't know. Can't make everything pretty.
Well, I know before I mentioned we are going to be running a Holley 12.3 Pro Dash, and we still are. It's just going to wind up being a later video, and we're going to run a 686 just for the time being, and don't worry, that'll be coming soon. So in the meantime, we still want to install our Dash Defense Screen Protector Kit, so I wanted to show you guys a quick how to do that. So of course you want to make sure the Pro Dash is nice and clean, peel back the film that it's shipped with so you can start installing it, and just carefully line it up onto the screen, and make sure you take your time so you avoid getting any dirt, debris, or bubbles into the film. And you'll see once you get started, it's pretty easy to get going, and it's also pretty forgiving once you get a little bubble in like that, because you just grab the squeegee that's included into the kit and you can work that out nice and easy. We also have a cleaning solution, a microfiber that has Reversion Raceworks laser engraved into it, you know, for the nice little details. And we have alcohol wipes and a sticky pad so you could clean the screen, say if it wasn't brand new and you wanted to make sure it was perfectly clean before this install. So we pride ourselves on, one, making these in the USA, as well as including everything you could possibly need or want to install this screen protector. Now once you have that thing fully installed, all you gotta do is peel off the protective layer and you're ready to go. And you can see how this adds a nice matte sheen to the screen so the glare isn't nearly as bad, and it'll have significantly reduced fingerprint retention as you start clicking on the screen. Now when it comes to installing the 686 Pro Dash into our dash bezel bracket, it really doesn't get much easier. All you gotta do is use the supplied hardware from Holley, and it goes right through the bracket into the digital dash, and you're ready for install. The nice part with these, there's no modification to the truck, so whether it's the 7-inch 686 or even the 12.3, they all go in absolutely no problem at all. And don't worry, we haven't forgotten about the 3.5 screen that's included with these kits. We also have a solution for that as well. You're gonna see we pop out this factory AC vent, and we have one that you could color match right to the factory dash and make it look like a perfect OEM part. So this one we painted with an SEM color coat. The black you see here is what you'd get if you ordered it from us, but I wanted to show you this is the paint we use to match the red interior because it could be one of the more tricky ones to match. We used the SEM Burgundy 15063, and in my opinion it matched pretty dang well. That's enough about paint. Let's show you what it takes to uninstall and install one of these things. So once you get that vent all pulled apart, this thing pops right in just like the OEM part because we used all the same mounting structures that the original part used. So it really doesn't get much simpler than that. And again, it's nice. It's a totally reversible modification you can make to your truck. You can see here the colors aren't perfectly matched, but you're also dealing with some sun fading over the years and all that. The main thing is the color matches the outside of the dash pretty nicely. Now to reassemble it, all you do is snap those tabs back together, and that's pretty much it. It's a pretty straightforward process. Now you might be wondering, well, how does the 3.5 attach to this thing? We actually make an adapter bracket that goes from your traditional 2 1/16 gauge and adapts it to the Holley 3.5, and you'll see pretty shortly how that all goes together. So here's that adapter I mentioned. We have 2 bolts that go through with a U-bolt to keep it all together. And once you put that through the gauge portion of it, it'll mount up just like a factory piece. What I did for the 3.5 wiring is I just fished it through one of the vent holes, and that hid it away pretty nicely. And then on the vehicle side, I just drilled a hole into the AC plumbing and was able to run the wire through that as well and make a pretty uninvasive install where you're not seeing all the wiring and everything's tucked away pretty nicely. And in my opinion, that came out pretty nice and we're ready to throw it into the truck.
And here's another part that we just finished up for the truck after a lot of prototyping. It's honestly not as clean of a print as I would like it to be for a final production part, but I'd definitely say it's a good enough, like, runnable, field tested prototype we could use in the truck, make sure we like it before we go to market for you guys. So we have these 4 access holes so you could mount up the Terminator X Max using these threaded inserts. We retain all the factory mounting locations using the factory screws. And we also added a hole up here so you could have a USB pass-through for tuning your ECU. So we're just trying to make it as easy as possible. And we also added made these holes a 1/2 inch so we could just put in some plugs and seal it up so you could still use this as a glove box. And one other feature that's kind of cool is this little notch right here is so you could actually get a screwdriver deep down in there and actually install this thing. So let's show you how it goes together. So to install this thing, you're just going to want to grab your factory glove box outer skin and remove the glove box itself with these 4 screws, and then just take your new one from Reversion Raceworks and pop it right into place. Then using the factory screws, just fasten it down. I will admit this last one is a little tricky to get to, but we were trying to just maximize the space you could get out of this thing. And there you go. Now you take your ECU. I find it easier to put the fasteners in already and just try to wiggle it into place. Look on top to align it with these through holes. And grab an Allen key and cinch those down as well. Take some 1/2 inch grommets, just work them into place. And just like that, you got an ECU mount and a functional glove box still. Unfortunately, I don't have the USB pass-through yet, but I did order that the other day. I did use one that we've used in the past, so I know it's going to work. And one more feature I almost forgot about is this factory like swing limit plastic bracket thing, whatever the hell you want to call it. We kept that as well, so it just pops in here, pull on it, and now you also get that factory functionality as well. And then on the factory there's like this rubber grommet on the side that prevented this from swinging out too far, so both of those worked in tandem to prevent the glove box from just falling out. And we 3D printed a separate piece that bolts on, so you could either bolt it on in the car, or the taper we put on it also helps, so you can install it on the bench and then just pop it into the vehicle, which we'll show you in a second. And there you go, it's ready to install. And I haven't been updating throughout the video as much as I normally like to, but that's just because I needed to get this thing together and done. I was definitely running a little tighter on time, but I wanted to go over a couple of issues we ran into as we went through the assembly. For one, putting this blower on is a big pain in the butt. Just installing it itself, pretty easy, but all the stuff behind it, like there's a pipe that goes from this elbow down to the lower gray elbow that we didn't powder coat. And I think that like equalizes something with this vacuum based throttle body looking thing on the back. That sucks to put back on. What else? I didn't realize that the factory or not factory, the Holley IAC wiring is for a Chrysler sensor, not a Chevy. So I had to repin that a little bit. Our map sensor did not work, which took a little bit of troubleshooting because we weren't sure if it was the sensor itself or what. And it turns out one of the pins, because we actually reused the factory connector, was bent. So the 5-volt signal was not touching, so the sensor wouldn't read to the Holley. Obviously not good. Other than that, it wasn't too bad. We actually needed to keep this brown wire for the alternator because our alternator is not charging right now, but that's an easy fix as well. But it's not a bad thing that we cut it out and still need to wire this back in because it needs 12-volt signal and also a resistance value, which I did not have the correct resistor, so I made 5 resistors in series that are 100 ohms each to make a 500 ohm resistance with the appropriate wattage limitations and whatnot. So not to bore you with the nerdy engineering stuff, hopefully that works and the alternator works again. But other than that, we pretty much have this thing buttoned up on the engine bay side. Now on the interior side of things, we still have a little bit to clean up. So obviously we don't have a gauge cluster in here right now, but all the wiring is done. And another issue we had with the Holley was, well, it wasn't a Holley issue, it was a me issue, is the wiring I did for the Keon signal. Initially I had it wired to a 12-volt source that was not getting power while cranking. So I changed that to, I believe it was, it's one of those 10 amp fuses, I believe number 4 for the gauges, which gets 12-volt voltage while cranking. So I changed our relay signal to be that. Then I taped up the factory gauge cluster harness so that's not like rattling around making noises behind the dash. And this is what's going to plug into the Holley Pro Dash. And we have the CAN bus going down and the power going out. I decided to mount a bus bar in the center console, and that's all of our accessory power, what I was just talking about. So we have that going to a relay that's underneath the dash, and then all of this gets power from the battery. It's getting power from the accessories on the back of the fuse block that's in the engine bay, so that should be a good battery source, but it's only getting signal once the key is turned on. So that's why these are accessory power. And then we have all of the Terminator X wiring that has to get tucked in. Everything's wired and works, but we have to make it pretty now that we know that it works. There's actually a slight change of plans as well too. We're going with the 686 Pro Dash because while this thing is getting tuned, we're gonna program in some stuff to our 12.3 and try to make something pretty cool. So we had this guy laying around and we're just gonna run this for the time being. At least they're wired up the same, so that makes things a little bit simpler. Plug this in and then connect the GPS, which we put the GPS right up here, so that should have good connection. And it's a little 8mm. Just snug that up. Don't go too tight with it. Then take this guy, install it just like stock.
So now you can see the reversion dash bezel mount looks like it's just meant to be in there. So it makes a digital dash install as easy as can be. And you could also get a little glimpse of our radio kit as well. That makes it look like these trucks should have came with a touchscreen Apple CarPlay radio. And now that we got that outer bezel in place, that 3.5 looks like it's right at home. And I think that this interior install is pretty much wrapped up. Then, after a little bit of remote tuning for our buddy Jeff over at Blue Sky Performance, we're able to get the truck fired up and ready to send out to him. Honestly, it runs pretty good for some pretty minimal tuning.
Well, that wraps up this week's video. We got the truck running and it's back up to Blue Sky Performance for another dyno session. From the Holley management to Jeff's tuning skills, I think there's a ton more power on the table. And if you haven't seen, we have an original dyno session with them just a few weeks back. Throw that link up on the screen somewhere for these people to find it. And if you have seen it, I want you to comment down below what the new power numbers are. Maybe we'll do another giveaway. We haven't figured that out yet. But comment, like, subscribe, you know the drill. Check in next week for some more updates.